the theater is her thing, and she's got friends in it.
Harwich Junior or something?
Yeah, Harwich Junior.
That all
What's her
appears
name?
to be working.
Juliet Seeley.
Have I seen her on anything? Any of the summer
She
shows?
was Baby Tommy over in
Join. Do we
Tuit
have to
a few
join?
years ago.
I was wondering that. Do you mind hearing
She
that?
was in Lily's,
Remind
like a couple of summers ago, she was in Lily's
I wondered that
Purple
too.
Plastic Purse on the outside stage. She was in,
I just saw 2 of their
Oh,
productions this
Did
summer.
you see Robin Hood?
I wasn't
oh,
sure.
she was in Robin Hood.
Wasn't sure what was
Do you
going
remember
on.
the
Right,
scene
I'm not-
where the two little
All right.
husband
I think
and
we're
wife
live.
come out on the stage? And she
Looks
says,
good to me.
husband, and the other one's playing
PM up there.
I think public
yeah.
meeting, I
don't-
think that's
That's
us.
What I liked about that play was
I loved it.
the erasure, so that just about every person had some lines.
Yeah.
So
All
It
right.
was fantastic.
We ready?
We are.
Happy September, everyone. What a beautiful day. Beautiful. The weather's supposed to be great this week. Welcome to the September local planning committee
Yes.
meeting. We're at it. I think our first, we don't have anybody online yet, so we can vote by verbally. Our first order of business is to review and approve Barbara's spectacular meeting minutes from
Spectacular.
August.
I thought they were just good.
So moved. All right, can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. So, I mean, this is our order of the things. We have a lot of documents as we're going through to these. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 documents to go through, but I wanted to start out with on the agenda, just to kind of remind everyone, and this is an open session to pipe in, that we're taking this to the people and the committees this fall, and so we had kind of a general plan last meeting for doing that, and item H on the agenda is a little bit about that too, the big ticket items, but I wanted to just open it up if anyone had done that for their kind of areas or making plans or going
Will be.
somewhere that or.
I will be bringing it to, in my chair's report, I'll bring it to the Harwich Cultural Council
Okay.
at our meeting on Thursday. We
Okay.
don't meet over the summer, so this will be
Okay.
our first meeting of the
Okay.
year. And then I'm gonna put it, I'm gonna tell them about it, the fact that there's a, desire for feedback and
Right.
thoughts. I'll send it to them in between meetings, and I'll put it on the agenda for our October meeting for any
Awesome.
discussion, review, suggestions, feedback.
Got it. And we had kind of hammered out in a deliberative democracy kind of way that what we were really, of course, we're open to all feedback, but we were really working on kind of the action items at the end. That's what we were specifically
I'll ask them
of the
to
big
pay attention
sections.
to that.
I don't know, Brian, that was a hard one point, which was good, but I think that was really good.
Right, I think we got to a good point
Yes.
structurally.
Yes. Yes. Anybody else have any other plans, things?
I have one with the clergy community. In fact, I had a
Please.
request
Oh,
to share our findings with a broader set of their community.
nice.
This is Reverend Amy, and they're going to start some planning process and thought that the voice of the community, as they start their visioning process, it would be good for us to share, for me to share, us to share, what some of our findings are.
They're doing their own visioning?
Yes.
Oh, gotcha.
So I
Okay.
don't see, I raised that
Yeah.
as a question to you guys, whether or not I should do it or somebody else should do it.
Feel free, Brian, you're our contact with the clergy.
That makes sense.
It's your subject area. Appreciate it.
And I can share our going forward
Yeah.
plans as well. And just to jump onto what
Yeah.
you were talking with Bernadette, is there a specific document now? We're kind of honing in on
So,
different chapters.
so it
but what
relates
is
to,
it?
David had asked this question on email to, can we see this whole thing as a whole? I will ask Sharon for that. She's not coming tonight. She's gonna plan, I think, to come in October. So I think as we get through these last few sections, that should be, and I agree, I think it's important that you gotta kind of read, see it as a whole. So we don't have one yet.
Okay.
But to David's answer about that, we should, and I'm hoping that they'll be able to piece that together. 'Cause it could-
Shouldn't be too hard.
Right, makes a lot of sense. David, you had some thoughts to where you were gonna shop this around a little bit this fall too.
The one that I had been to last year was the Health Board of Health. You asked me, what are you going to ask them? And I didn't know at the time. I wanted to look more carefully,
Yeah.
which is why I want to see all the documents
Got it.
together.
Okay.
So I will be asking their staff person to schedule me after I've done that.
Got it. Anybody else who was? Yes, please, Christine. Please come join us.
Hide over there. As you go to different boards, if you could just let me know or to copy me so that I can also sit in case questions arise, or I can at least take notes to convey back to Sharon, for any additional thoughts.
What's the plan to go to the planning board? I think I may have asked that before.
I have.
Don't have a date yet.
We don't have a date, and that's really up to the LCP to decide. I
just don't want them
for
to
the
be
housing
left out of the
production
loop
plan, we
forever.
did set aside a public input meeting
When is
for
that?
October 22nd,
Oh, I hadn't heard that date.
Tuesday,
That's
so
great.
that's a public
When is that
hearing.
meeting?
When is it?
What
It's
is
the
it?
planning board's meeting on Tuesday, October 22nd. We are holding a public hearing for the housing production plan. And the housing production plan, it's a requirement of
We
the
know. Yeah,
HPP to be submitted to the state.
Yep. I hadn't heard the date, but we love it.
Yep.
We love putting something on the calendar. Anybody who can be there will be. And in fact, I had put this on. This is item H on our agenda: review of sessions for housing production plan. So Tuesday, October 22nd. Do you know when and where? Sure you do.
6:30 in the Griffin Room.
What time, 7:30? 6:30?
6:30 in the Griffin Room.
Griffin Room. Okay.
Yep.
And we have the closest thing we have. We have a draft. I mean, we have a pretty firm.
It's a
draft.
final draft.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty firm.
And
Yeah.
I was
October
going to say, I
22nd?
do,
Tuesday at 6:30.
Yep.
I'll put it in a follow-up
Okay.
email. Yep.
and I agree with David, if we can put together one packet for all of the boards so that they're all reviewing the same document, that would be helpful.
Ed had sent, and I think just put it down in writing, but more that we had articulated. You sent me a nice email about since some housing legislation had changed recently, we wanted to make sure, look at that. To make sure that the housing plan reflected that.
I don't know how much we do, I think, but maybe an addendum to it to reference the new housing bond bill, which is very extensive in the areas that it reaches into. That should be actively reviewed in the coming year. See what's appropriate for the town to participate in.
Okay.
Because it touches virtually everything.
Cool. So housing, we're gonna be able to check off the box eventually, soon. That's great. Thank you, Christine, for getting that organized with the big town session and all. That's awesome. Any updates on the open space and recreation plan? It's just to organize ourselves.
I will be sending out the draft goals and objectives to the committee for their review and
Okay.
input. And then going forward, we're waiting for Ty and Bond to finalize send us a final draft of all of their maps and basically an updated open space and recreation plan.
Okay. Since we're sort of addressing, thank you, since we're sort of addressing B and H at the same time, and we can come back to H a little bit, I think the overall connecting idea here is that housing is locked in for a time. That's wonderful. Planning board and select board are to be scheduled because that's kind of a unified front. But everyone else has been in this process for 2 years. You're as informed as anybody.
Yeah.
So if you want to go and shop it around and focusing on the feedback about the last points of the document that's pertinent to that group, which is really the action steps, that you are hereby knighted to do so. Just tell Christine and myself, and so we're keeping track of it. Questions about that?
Not particularly. One of the things had done is contact town employees, a variety of them.
Thank you.
And a lot of that input has sort of inserted during our meetings.
Yeah.
But I can go back, circle back around with some of the department heads, some of the division folks, some of the union folks.
Yeah, it's great.
So-
It's great.
I've given I'm
I
sorry.
was going to
Brian.
say you're capturing notes, and the reason I'm asking is I'm trying to get some thoughts around governance. And I would think that some of the employees and some of their perspectives might be some very interesting input toward whatever we recommend for governance.
Yeah, I will, yeah.
At least it makes it more complete.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And I've, in terms of department heads, I have let them know that we will be sending out a draft of the LCP for their input and to also share with their boards that we will want to get on their boards to make a presentation to their boards or committees. So, and we welcome any input from them.
So Christine, I was just going to say, because I'm on trustees for the library, and I was just going to say, I remember that our next meeting will be the very first Wednesday in October, and I was going to say I'd ask the chair to put it on the agenda, but if you'd be reaching out to Ginny anyway, should I not bother? I think when you reach out to Ginny, Ginny will end up reporting on it, and we'll probably end up having it on a future agenda.
Sure.
Maybe not October 2nd,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah, I'm happy to come on October 2nd or to talk with them, but I can also check with Ginny as
Yeah,
well.
if you're going to send it out to all the directors.
Yeah.
I probably just, that, I might be,
Well, no, I think it's important to also get it out to the boards and committee members
Okay.
as volunteers because
Right.
we want their input as well.
Yeah.
Because, town hall staff, it's important to get their input, but it's also very important to make the boards and committees aware of these other plans
Yeah.
that could potentially impact, not impact, but we just want to make sure that our goals are in line with their goals.
Yeah.
And moving forward.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of them too as part of the cultural part more than anything.
Absolutely, I think
But,
the libraries play a huge
Yeah,
part.
I don't vision myself bringing them in a whole chapter of all this stuff, but any feedback they might have on that part, as well as Kara and the Cultural Council.
Mhm. No, that's great.
All right,
Joyce, quick question.
Please.
I know I'm supposed to do Concom
Yeah.
for, with the natural environment and everything. We have, within our draft, we have the open space goal and open space policies. Is that going to be impacted at all by the draft open space and rec plan?
Do you mean the policies that are
Well,
in here for
well,
the
the action
natural
items,
resources?
we're talking about our goals and policies that that I'm supposed to go talk to them about that we discussed and everything.
Yep.
Do you think there's going to be,
There should be some overlap, so,
well, I don't want to contradict what the open space and rec plan is going to propose, that's why I was asking.
okay, I'll send this committee the draft as well, so that everyone can take a look at what we've done so far.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Great. Cool. Let's go on to, I mean, sometimes I feel like I should stand outside of Shaw's and talk different about this. Like, we want just everyone to know about it as much as
Well,
possible,
I think that's the part, I share that feeling, and then yet, because I've had to do this, I mentioned in the past, a community engagement thing that the
Right.
MCC requires, and I know I've said this before, it's like, you do your due diligence, you do the best you can, but I swear to God, you're still gonna find that some days, there are some people that you could go up to their front door, knock on it, suction cup it to their nose, read it to them out loud, and they'll still be like, oh, I didn't know anything about that. And it frustrates me, it's like, I wanna get everybody, but
we just keep doing the best we can.
we do.
Marching forwards, let's start to do C and D, and so that is the community design section in your email. which there's like a redo draft for that. And then she also, which it's in your email, I mean, it's an email, it's not like I have a secret draft or anything. But that was up, and then added to that was the village strategy jazz, which they had dug out the Harwich villages. This was work from prior LCPs. And so that's also a document in there. And this whole like concept, so I wanna dig into this, community design.
The community design is pretty much a document, it's a pretty far along draft document.
Yep,
The other one you've included, the village strategies, looks like they've pulled out all the old stuff to find out what's still relevant, for us to comment on.
okay.
So that doesn't look like any sort of final document at all. And there's a lot of things out there that either have been done or are out of place.
Well, I think,
So I'm not sure
so what
how-
I interpreted it as, okay, and Sharon and I didn't do a deep dive on it, but I interpreted it as twofold. One, kind of like strategies that were used before, or at least articulated before, and then also like providing an update for this community design thing, but trying to use the tool of the village concept. Does anybody understand that differently?
I haven't looked at these in great detail.
Okay,
I believe the community design document holds together. I've got some nits and so forth.
oh, well, give us the nits,
No,
okay, but you're gonna give us the big
No,
picture
I'm not
first?
ready. I'm just
Okay.
giving you an overview.
Okay,
I guess what I'm saying is the other document is really very different.
okay, well, let's do community design
Okay,
first
good.
and accomplish something, and then we'll get to that, we can go through the villages.
Where does the community design document?
It is in that email, it's called Harwich LCP Existing Conditions,
Conditions.
Community Design, 8/22/24. I've been trying to focus on the end,
That's what I focus on.
draft policies.
Um,
And I think this is where it gets to, David, review 2011 LCP strategies for each of the villages, so let's do that second.
I was going to say, I have a problem with saying that as sort of a recommendation, right?
Okay,
That's
I mean,
something
this
we gotta
should have
do
been-
before we get to that.
Right, this should have been
Okay.
done by us.
sure,
Yeah.
let's do it,
Exactly.
but, okay, we can
You
do
took
that.
the words right out of my mouth.
We
Thank you.
can do that, we can do that. The thing that, in always trying to be timely about this, and we had the privilege of looking at the bigger, we've even heard this somewhat over time, big picture, is East Harwich is still very much in the news. And the design guidelines for new development and redevelopment that are reflective of village character. I think that's a great statement for Harwich, Port Harwich Center, East Harwich, West Harwich. I would toss out here is something to the effect of, and I'm sure Sharon will listen to this and can incorporate feedback into this. Given large tracts of land in East Harwich, basically like there's another big 8-acre parcel going up before the planning board and stuff like that. And that is just very, very, whatever all happens, it is just all very timely. So we're kind of pointing the flashlight there. Even, I don't even know who's saying it, there's like tensions in the community between existing zoning, and what community members feel is in the best interest of the community, or whatever.
So we've got to say something about that,
You
or
gotta, like,
or
acknowledge
something,
the controversy.
or something
you know.
directional. What do we do with that? Because that is the current situation.
I always look at David, because David's been in this
Well, I've got a lot-
20-year
I've
fight
got a
on
lot
East
of this
Harwich.
history.
Yes, yes, yes.
Unfortunately, East Harwich took up probably more than 50% of my time as the town planner, so I don't want to make that mistake as a committee member here. But when I was working so hard, there were a couple of key voices that I listened to. Bob Bradley was a great one. There were a few other people. But there was the select board member who happens to be sitting to your right,
Okay.
who said basically, why are you spending all this time in East Harwich? What about Harwich Center and Harwich Port? So I think the first bullet is right on target.
Yeah.
I think that is the place to begin. And then the second bullet is almost as important because that's got the most potential for something to happen. Now, whether we need to flesh out the second bullet more, which I think is where you were going,
Yes.
that would be fine for me.
And I
But I
think-
really like it preceded by the
Love
first
it,
bullet.
love it. And I think why I think is it's high visibility, right? So you have a lot of trees, and then you have maybe big changes, and for better or worse, then there's a lot of shrieking about it.
Isn't the second bullet a subset to the first? I mean, revisiting
It
East
is.
Harwich would be part of developing a 2024.
And I think you might even say because of large acreage, because of the number of
Well-
issues. So
Or the
large
high
acreage,
activity.
sewer,
There's
high
two,
activity.
amount of
there's two
development.
separate issues,
Yeah.
and I don't know how to break it down here, but East Harwich overall has the sort of tree cutting Eastwood Homes developments that you're talking
yes,
about.
Yes.
My focus was always on the area right in the
I know.
commercial district,
Right.
because that's where you could have the village housing, the more dense housing. So that has a character you're not going to find anywhere else in town.
And I
So
actually
we got
think we
two
should
separate
put that in there, to whoever's listening. We should put it in there. David is approaching this, so I think that you're approaching it from your planning experience, you know, as a professional planner, but also as a member of the community, which I think is incredibly important to say, like, here's, you know, with sidewalks, a grocery store you can walk to, you know, like potential transportation options, like, this is an area for meaningful, potentially higher density development, and yet also there are the periphery trees, this is where some of our values as a community are butting up against, where our zoning is, you know, 1 acre zoning, the secondary housing that gets sucked up, and this is like the crux of the challenge.
And I think it's dangerous to do one without the other, or to
Right,
not
Right, just
to not
acknowledge the
acknowledge
conundrum. Yes.
acknowledge that planning requires both to come together. I live there.
Yes, no, I know you do, I know you do, I
I
know
got a
you
vested
do.
interest.
I know you do.
They both have to come together,
Yeah.
and we can't continue development without.
Based on what David and talking about, and I was on the select board through that whole process, is what's being talked about, and I don't know what you'd call it, the East Harwich Village Center.
Sure.
What you would develop for that would be completely different than what you develop for the rest of East Harwich.
That's right. That's right.
And
Those are two separate
and
issues.
so, in this stuff, in this statement here, is there a way to identify, because the design guidelines, revisit the East Harwich design study was
That's-
more concentrated around the village center than,
But it's,
Four
it's
corners.
different, but it's related, because you wouldn't allow the density to be such a distance from the center, where the center is where it's designed to be part. I mean, unplanned, it could be a little chaotic for that
In-
outer ring that you're talking about.
In the one, I think that one of the big mistakes in 2000, whatever year it was, 2011, was trying to expand it. There's plenty of land right in that commercial district, and a lot of that land could be the residential. So when it says here in this bullet, revisit the East Harwich design study, I think we should say, just limit it to the existing commercial district. Then you got the whole suburban issue. And that's what Eastwood Homes deals
And
with.
that is,
and that's
the-
where
that's
the tree
the
cutting
public
comes in.
outcry.
Yeah,
That's the
that's,
public
all you're
outcry.
doing is kicking that can to an outer ring. It doesn't address it.
Well, I think maybe we need two separate bullets.
yeah.
Okay.
Please, Christine, because Christine's
Yeah,
in it.
I think the suburban issue is one set of values in terms of residential development, but I also think for the commercial and future of, do we want to address housing? Do we want to minimize impacts to the environment where there is sewer?
Yes.
You know, the
Yes.
redevelopment options in the commercial highway 2 zone, there are opportunities. So I think separating it out. We want to avoid kicking it down the can.
Right.
We want to address both head on. So I think maybe separating it out into
I
two
think
bullets.
we have to
Would be
talk
good.
about both, because otherwise it just gets
It's
lumped
confusing.
in. Yes, there are two separate issues there.
Right, and I
Yeah.
guess
Different
maybe
faces to-
maybe
Yes.
where I'm coming from, and tell me if I'm I'm off kilter here, is when you talk about the density being closer to the core because that's where, the larger density, or the higher
Yes.
density, closer
Yes.
to the
Yes.
core, and the further out from the core is more of the, more urban sprawl than it is.
Or suburban, if
Suburban,
we're
well-
being touched, right? So I think that the gist of it is like, right, the plan, or the old plan was, hey, in Harwich Center, this Highway 2 zone, right, there are properties that are underutilized.
Right.
That you could put, say, you know, dense units.
Yeah, but there are also limitations, because part of that also falls in the Six Ponds DCPC, and whether or not, is it appropriate for those areas to be in the Six Ponds DCPC? Is that something we need to revisit
Well, Six
and
Ponds
carve
is a
out?
little, it's further out from the core.
Yeah, but it includes
But it's,
that
no, it takes a
quadrant
big
of the-
chunk of it. It's a good quarter of it.
Okay, maybe I don't know where the
And
quadrants
a
are.
no-growth step from 15, 20 years ago was to include the northwest quadrant of that district as
Okay.
part of the Six
Yeah.
Ponds district.
Yeah,
It is
like,
mislabeled, but you tell that to the general public and you're gonna get all sorts of feedback.
Right, okay, I got it
You
now.
know, so the issue is if you're going to go for higher density there, you're going to have to ask the Cape Cod Commission to revisit.
Well, I
And that
don't,
should be done.
And that should be done.
But what you got, I'm sorry for jumping in, but what you got, this is from a 40-year village planner. When you talk about the higher density that is appropriate in the village, you've got to say, we have to continue strategies to control development in the rural and in the
So
suburban type of
this is how
neighborhoods.
these things are then, the optics of the 1 acre homes that are more on the periphery, so to speak, at least a very verbal contingent in town, are terrible. But that's what the zoning is, so, you know.
But that's part of, that will be part of this,
Yes.
is this reevaluating the zoning in that
Yes,
area
yes.
for the
I think
Six
I-
Ponds and for,
Yeah,
that should be part of it.
I think we
And that
should
should be a
probably say that.
priority, and we should be
Yeah.
clear about it.
I agree.
One of the other real tricky parts of this, though, is because with our sewer plant, whatever,
Correct.
Yeah, that's very true.
it has sort of put caps on development in each.
It's a no net flow.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
neutral.
yeah.
It's a flow
But
neutral,
It's done by embayment or whatever they call the areas,
the watersheds.
watersheds. So if we increase the density
Yeah.
and the number of units in
Yep.
East Harwich, we've got to strip it out of someplace else.
So from a political.
Thank you for
That's
highlighting that. That's a
spectacular.
challenge too.
Yes, yes.
So-
So I guess just for putting this, I think that if we don't put it, we will be asked about it.
Correct.
Is, you know, okay, the density, but like we have to include, I think from everything we've heard, some statement about this revisiting the zoning in this area.
But it has to be in part with what Ed's saying in terms of, is Harwich ready to maybe create its own infrastructure for wastewater treatment? Because right now we have contracts with Chatham that
Yeah.
they take our flow, but they're only taking a certain amount of flow.
Right.
And our intermunicipal agreements with maybe Yarmouth or Dennis, how is that going to come into play for other parts of the town? Because right now, the Zone 2s, I think, are priority for any sewering, is my understanding, and I could be wrong on that, but I think this is an opportunity to highlight that as a priority,
I think we should
but they
say
should
it.
be together.
It's not necessarily the zone twos, it's the watersheds that are impacting the
Yeah.
embayment.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're primarily required to clean up.
Correct.
Could
The-
you just give me a working definition of an embayment? I kind of think I understand what you're saying,
It's,
but.
Discharges into a bay.
Yeah.
It's
starts-
the air, the whole watershed area that discharges into a given bay.
So the-
Whether that bay is
Okay.
Pleasant Bay or
Okay.
Saquatucket
This
Harbor.
area, because we discharge down through Saquatucket Harbor.
So septic's rolling through Saquatucket Harbor,
That's
yes.
the embayment. The campground area, which has incredible density.
Yeah.
no leach fields or anything.
It's not
But
in
that-
there.
But that doesn't matter because they
Go right up to
Go
the
right to the
go
ocean.
right out to the ocean. It's like spitting
Yeah.
in a swimming.
It's yet,
Describe this thing. It's what?
it's yet another example of bureaucratic programs aligning decisions in ways that don't always make sense.
Okay, and then so East
Pardon my
Harwich, the
French.
Seven Ponds district is like Pleasant Bay, right? Largely.
Part of it is.
Part of it, yeah.
And,
Hawks
and,
next.
and part of
Yeah,
it
I'll
is
just do it.
Saquatucket and
Yeah,
the river.
sure, it overlaps there. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have an appetite for saying all of this. Like, if we've done anything in the last 2 years, was try to put it all out there.
The village, are we in the village section or whatever?
No, we're still on, we'll finish out this community design.
Okay, the
section.
community
Yeah.
design, I was tying it
Yeah.
in together.
Yeah,
This is where we can talk about the potential for East Harwich, the central part of it, as a village design. We do have to talk about balancing it out. And there's one set of strategies for what I call rural, which is most of Six Ponds, except for that one little commercial piece. And then the suburban is another piece that needs balance, and we can address the tree clearing issue there. So
There's
there's
just
a
a-
lot of ways to tie it together.
there's a lot of hate
And
circulating.
then the one last thing,
Suburban.
I'll try not to get carried away too much. The whole wastewater issue and the implications that Ed and Christina both just touched on. There's a whole area that affects how this town will grow that this committee hasn't touched upon. And I don't know if we can in this LCP, but it's a very important area.
All right, with that, should we get to the villages?
One more comment. Something tells me that we did all these findings that talked about culture and now we're into units and spreadsheets. Somehow I think we need to bring kind of the spirit of the culture back into how we're
Love
trying
it.
to frame this.
Love it. I think you're right on with that. I mean, this is like so nuanced, and yet at the end of the day, like there is large vocal components of the community that are just horrified by what the zoning
Yes.
allows, what the market is quote supporting, and how that impacts what they or we or I'm not trying to be neutral about it, interpret as Harwich's culture. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know we can't prevent, nor do we
Yeah.
want to
Yeah,
eliminate
yeah.
development.
Yeah.
But I think it's up to us to have the LCP pull forward some of that
We can
culture.
say something like that, this is a tension here.
Yes.
Right? There is a tension.
And that needs to
Com-
be part of the
it's- There's a
plan.
more complex need for balance in that village than anywhere else.
That's because it's the most undeveloped.
Right, you just can't, you don't have those issues in other places. This is a unique area.
It is. It's where a lot of our issues collide.
In recognition that all of you have been working 2 years on all of this, and I came in last year, but I came in right in the middle of the East Harwich conference.
It's still going.
I
It's
went
ongoing.
right
It's
in
ongoing.
there.
Bravely
And so,
went to where no one else
As I'm
would go.
listening to everyone, I appreciate so much that is going to be integrated in, those aspects. But I'm trying to circling in my head as far as just based on my communication with the specific groups in East Harwich, how are they gonna understand it? And if they can, one of the ways that I thought of it, especially this whole backstory, this spreadsheet
Right.
right here, which is difficult to understand for me, because there's no comparison. And I know that when I was speaking to the organizations that were there in East Harwich, they understood, I felt an understanding with that population, compare this to now, compare this to now. So that could be one way to segue in as far as how they can understand what this LCP, what is going to do as far as moving forward, acknowledging this, we acknowledge that happened, but here were the circumstances, So in a comparative segue in, if you're looking for a way to address it, would that be helpful? Or would it just fall flat, as Bernadette says?
I think in work
But we still have to
sessions,
try.
we should have those conversations.
Yeah.
I think in a final document, we shouldn't revisit too much.
Okay.
I could say the same thing for national politics, but I'll stick to our own stuff. But I do think in terms of, you're big on communication and getting the word out. And I think it is worth in work sessions pointing out these sort of, this is where we've come. But our document should be, after we've looked at all those village strategies, and I think we could throw out half of them, then we need to bring the rest in to this document. And like Brian started out, we don't want to have it as a draft policy bullet. We want to do the work. And I think we can come up with a good set of
Okay.
current proposals.
With that, should we go on to the village strategies?
Yes.
So interesting setup in this. So presuming that there's going to be a village strategy section in the LCP, do we need to have 2000, 2011, and 2024? Probably not, right?
This is
I
just-
think we
I don't
just should have
think
this
so.
2024.
This should
You're stirring
simply-
the pot doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Oh, hey,
This
squirrel.
should simply be to stimulate
going.
our discussion.
Okay,
yep.
And we should create something that's totally different than
Right.
this particular
Yeah.
item.
Okay, so, in East Harwich, we could, okay, I think zoning land use, what we're saying is, actually, the sentence that's proposed new zoning provisions that direct growth to the East Harwich Village and protect open space in the surrounding area. I think that's what we were saying, right? That was in 2011.
Which one were you reading?
In
Right side.
East Harwich, right side,
bottom of
last point under zoning land use.
Yeah, protect open, yeah, we.
That's great.
We can amplify that one.
Yeah.
Because almost every other statement in this column related to East Harwich is related to the village center.
And is that
Except for
what's
that one
meant by
statement.
village? So when I see that East Harwich Village, is that
Current commercial district.
The four corners.
commercial, right, the Four Corners Commercial District?
And then it kind of just peters out there,
You know,
Okay.
yeah.
sidewalk
You know,
to
and
sidewalk
the
type of
sidewalks,
thing.
but at one point there were no sidewalks, then, then they,
Right.
that was part of the vision.
Yeah.
They laid out, at one point there was nothing out there but Hinkley.
Because I
That's
think
going back
it's
too far.
important to qualify those things or draw a picture and point to it. Because sometimes,
Well, you
living
know,
in East, well,
Yeah.
I'll give you a perspective. Living in East Harwich, I can feel for what some of those groups feel. It's just dump the development to East Harwich. But that's not what you mean when you talk about village.
I would say something like, starting with the East Harwich Commercial District, there were previous efforts to turn that into a village. That should be redone,
Resurrected.
relooked at.
yeah.
And
Is that,
it should.
is that
and-
still
and-
accurate?
yes.
So there's a statement there, so from a commercial highway district to a village center? Because that's
Yes.
the first statement.
Yes, that's the area.
So we could include
And
that again.
I would further say, this time around, we should say, and that existing area, that existing commercial district, is large enough for this concept.
Yeah.
Beyond that, and this is where it picks up on direct growth to the East Harwich Village and protect open space in the surrounding area. Beyond that, we should say, there's a lot of other land in East Harwich, and there's a lot of public concern about that.
Yeah.
Right.
And we should both recognize and improve as needed the Six Ponds District, but equally important, we should address the 1 acre zoning in the suburban section.
And I think you're
That-
great
that's
about
the
saying
framework-
that,
that's the
not
framework
lumping
I
East
recommend.
Harwich together.
Right, or just not making it look like it's
Yeah,
a
hey,
big development dump.
Yeah,
That goes
yeah.
over.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the way you describe it, I hear you verbally describe it, David. I don't read it that way. So I think we have to make sure
That's why I think
That's
there
why
should
he's
be a
bringing it up.
very,
we have to qualify, put pictures. I didn't understand those zones until you described them, and I can picture now Six Ponds.
We probably don't have to say anything about transportation.
transportation's only.
Well, a lot of what was recommended in 2011 has been done.
Right, is wastewater, do we need to say anything about waste? Well, you had such nice thoughts about wastewater, Christine.
Should we
A lot of this has been done.
Yeah.
acknowledge that? I think it's important to acknowledge things that were in the last plan that were done.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, because I think a lot of times we're hearing so much from people who are starting to look at it and saying that well, you said this, but it didn't get
Yeah.
done. There's also the misconception that we have some power to do it. We don't.
Right?
Just trying to articulate it.
Well, let's take credit for
But,
what's done.
but not the blame for the stuff. Yeah, and I think that's helpful to point
Yeah.
that out.
We gotta sell this.
Some small
It's-
successes.
Okay.
Life kept moving along and
So
changing.
is there some way to, and I'm not smart enough to know which sentences were done, but it's probably helpful to Sharon to know what was done.
One of the things that I remember from reading both documents, again, as I kind of came in, is the format. It was a very clear format of recommendation, objective, and this is where you go to get it. This is what you did, these are the steps to get it. So just as far as starting it from there, that's where you can really go with, because I was able to read back through, and from that format, I could actually pinpoint which things were done.
Reading back through,
Through the 2011.
The actual documents?
Or even back to 2000, because of that format, which is not yet in the format we have now, as
Right.
far as objective. I like objective recommendations, actions.
another piece of interesting history is the 2011 plan. Ed can give you his perspective. But one of the criticisms was that there was an action plan, not a comprehensive plan. So the same reasons that you can follow it like that is because the planning board members and myself who did all the writing, we ignored so much stuff. And we said, these are the bullets we would really want to address. Now, the follow-up was very mixed. And also the perspective of the board was a bit questionable. But the action plan idea was why you could follow it.
Okay, I don't want to die on the hill of East Harwich just through the rest of these documents.
I gotta shut up
I
now.
think we've got our sentiments. No, we accomplished a lot here. Like, yes.
We did.
One
Yes.
real quick.
Last East Harwich thought.
Historical note. Right
Throw it back
now,
at me.
137 and 39 is what we consider the village. 80, 100 years ago, the village was at 39
Yeah.
Church, yeah.
and Pleasant Bay.
Yeah.
There was
39.
stores there, there was a school there.
Yeah, sure.
39?
South.
39
South.
Pleasant Bay.
Just
I
due
can't even
south.
picture a store there.
Yeah.
Due south, like the corner store.
Walker Oil.
Was
Where the
there?
corner
Methodist
store is
church.
the church. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, that makes sense.
That's going back how
In
many
fact,
years?
that's why they brought up, the
The
picture
cemetery
the
is
picture they
there.
pulled up for East
Late
Harwich that time
1800s,
was
early 1900s.
the Methodist church, but
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Where the corner store is now.
Oh, I'm thinking of the other way.
Oh, no.
No, he's saying Pleasant Bay Road,
Oh, you're going
Out
north.
towards Orleans.
out towards Route
Oh.
6.
Oh, further
39.
east.
further out.
I'm saying I can't
Okay.
picture a store there. It's where the Harwich sign is.
Yeah.
The Welcome to Harwich.
Okay.
Well, it's
No.
right where
No,
Pleasant
not
Bay.
Pleasant
It's,
Bay.
it's the
Oh.
dangerous,
39, it's way out east.
the
Got it.
dangerous
By the
intersection.
nursing home.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Pleasant
that's the
Bay
most dangerous
Road.
intersection on Cape Cod.
Yeah. The northeast quadrant of that
By
intersection.
number
back
of
in
cars
there
that travel it.
Was where Walker Oil was.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
like a
I
mile.
love it. Learn something new every day.
Slow them down.
Okay.
Well, Walker lives across the
The
street
other
from
was
me.
some
and it was her
Hinkley's
father's
and
business.
3 more
Harwich Port,
empty
let's bang
corners.
it out.
All right, let's
Oh,
go.
yeah.
Harwich Port, we could throw out whatever stronger links between these amenities and the village center, or whatever, we can throw that out.
A lot of the harbor stuff that's at
Has
Edmund
been
here
done.
has
Been
been
done.
done.
You know, all that federal money built us a new harbor.
Yep.
Save money.
Say, okay, excuse me. I think Harwich Port, what are we saying? We're saying about Harwich Port is,
Beach parking is a concern.
yep, is like, I guess it's the access to the, congestion around the amenities of restaurants, recreation. Poor people that live there.
Pedestrian areas.
All
Barbara, getting
all
out of
360 people allowed
Public
at the port,
safety.
huh?
Pedestrians.
getting out of there.
They built up the commercial infrastructure without having
Right.
the other infrastructure to accommodate that.
There's a lot of sidewalk references, and that's always a very important thing. One of the things I'd like to put in is an annual dedicated amount to be built for sidewalks. I think Dennis has done that. They've built a lot of sidewalks in the last 10, 15 years. So that's just a type of bullet I'd love to see in here.
But does that get complicated, David? I don't know where you mean in Dennis, but, down there, because the whole thing, of the current sidewalk they're trying to build it's the state road. It would still help us
Most
if
of
we
the-
could earmark some local funds towards it, even though we don't have all the control of it.
Most of the new sidewalks I've seen are not on the state highways, at least in Dennis. But there's
That's
a
what
lot
I
of.
mean. So when I hear sidewalks in Harwichport, the first thing I'm thinking about is this current project, and people don't understand why it's taken so long, and part of it is because we start it, but then it goes to the state, and we don't
Yeah.
have
Christine
complete
is a
control
sidewalk
of it.
expert.
Oh, no, I'm not. I was just gonna say
No, I'm
to,
just curious about if there's still something valid to the idea of us earmarking.
there is, because I think it's important, maybe this might be an opportunity to highlight a partnership to work with MassDOT as a transportation improvement program to do the sidewalks within Harwichport, but also address some of the speeding and some of the lighting issues just for pedestrian safety. I know it's come up when I've talked with the businesses multiple times.
Certain
And-
businesses more than others, yes.
And I do think MassDOT is even recognizing that they have a responsibility to work with the towns, and they have. So I think, this might, putting it in this plan as a priority, I think would be, give a little bit of more direction and some validation.
And there are other sidewalks spurring off of it that are our own property and not,
Correct, but to David's point, I think add the bullet for,
Yeah.
let's earmark some funding
money.
to do this, and how much do we want to accomplish each year?
What should we say about, go ahead.
Is it just sidewalks or sidewalks and pedestrian safety?
I think it's like moving about Harwichport, right?
Well-
Like,
I misspoke by mentioning this because it's really not Harwichport, it's townwide. I think the sidewalk fund should be.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to limit it to just Harwichport. But yes, in Harwichport, it should be public safety too.
Yeah, you know, I'm a big fan of the raised sidewalks that they've done in like Parsons Mills on 149.
Barnstable has done it, yeah.
Barnstable Village,
Yep.
670. In terms of slowing traffic down.
The speed tables, yeah.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
149.
yep, little bumps.
Certainly slows me down.
The baby rolls. Even if you don't want to slow down, it slows the person in front of you down.
and this is a recognition of Harwichport is increasingly a social destination.
It's a destination.
Shopping,
Yeah.
going out at night, drinking, carousing. That it was not 15,
Drinking some
that it
more.
was not 15 years ago,
Right.
not even 10 years ago.
Wasn't, yeah.
It was not. It was
Totally-
not.
totally
I was young and partied in this town once.
And that's not what, and she knew that
Wide enough sidewalks.
And that wasn't the place to go.
It was not.
Yeah.
We all of that
Like,
generation look at each
Yeah.
other, and yet now there's like 9 sidewalks between the Sunday school and the park, and yet it's still difficult to move around. So a comprehensive sense of how to move around that area safely.
Are we trying to say anything about the culture of what we want it to be? And it's,
We don't want a honky tonk, thank you.
And the lack of parking is a big part of that, because people are driving around, looking for somewhere to park. They're not looking at the pedestrians crossing. There's just a lot more people, and there's,
Two separate negative
it's
issues.
not, sidewalks isn't gonna solve all the
maybe
problems.
that's part of our framing, that what governs the growth there is the availability of parking and its sidewalks. And otherwise, without some of those things, it becomes more and more
But
untenable.
Harwichport has sidewalks. That's not an issue, it's just the fact
Well, speed
of,
How many
bumps, let's
people
say.
are on them and where they're.
right, it's just that things are not controlled correctly or utilized correctly is the biggest issue. I mean, they have had sidewalks on both sides, they've got 1,000,001 crosswalks, as you said. And
9, okay.
yeah,
So what would be the next thing that needs to happen before you allow the next restaurant to go in or the next store to go in?
Well, I think it's a safety issue, though. Those sidewalks are in very rough condition, and they're not ADA compliant. We are an aging community, and so for people who have any sort of mobility issue, I'm healthy, and good luck. I've almost tripped over and fallen a couple of times on some of the, not down in Harwichport, but in other communities where it's in, the sidewalks aren't in great condition. So you always, I think it's an opportunity. We are an aging community. We're also a tourist and seasonal community. We want the experience to be welcoming. And to do the speed tables, I think, is very important because you do speed up, or at least I have, even down in Harwichport, on the Route 28 area. But even at night, you do observations in the evening. People are out in the street walking, and the sidewalks are too crowded, and you can't see people because there's little to no lighting, and it is dangerous. And it's not just the older kids those who are at the bars. It's young families.
Oh yeah,
walking
there's
around.
all sorts
So,
of
yeah.
recreating
Right.
going on down there.
Yeah. The argument is, well, it's a state highway.
Yeah.
Just because it's a state highway doesn't mean you need
Still
to
need to
have a
pursue it.
speed limit of 40 miles an hour the entire lane.
35.
I think it's an opportunity for an improvement, and it's one
Yes,
that's been
absolutely.
discussed, so,
And the same with Harwich Center.
yeah.
Can we talk about wastewater in Harwichport? Do we need to? We can drop
Yeah,
on-
nothing there's been done.
Okay.
Aren't they last on the list?
I think so.
Yeah.
No,
That's probably why. as
I don't
far
think
as
so.
with the
Pretty far
Yeah.
down.
We're pretty
Yeah, I was
far
gonna say,
down. I'll be
not
dead.
Wastewater.
Maybe not last, but pretty close.
Damn close at last.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's
Like
on
West Harwich is
anyone's
above.
mind.
For most of Harwichport, though, the justification for extending the sewer wastewater system there is not so much because of our requirements to clean up water going into the estuaries or the embayments, is for economic development purposes.
Mm.
Because that's what restrains it.
What do you need
yeah, I
economic
don't know
development
what you
for
mean.
from what we've already got down there?
Well,
What do you want, multi-story
see
buildings
a
and
lot of
parking
restrictions.
garages?
you probably, a lot of people probably don't want that, but that would be the only real justification for doing
I'm not
it.
saying we need to have it. I mean,
Yeah, I
you've got the park going into Sacotucket with Coldbrook and everything. You got the park going into Witchmere. But other than that, a lot of Harwichport, like you were saying with the campground, a lot of that just
So it just goes to the ocean, and the way we're
Right.
keeping track, it doesn't quite matter.
Correct.
But you look at anything south-facing, none of it meets current state water standards in the Cape. None of it has at all. I mean,
Right.
like, for a long time.
Mm.
But
So we
It
should,
just happens to be a tide.
we should funnel the entire town to Harwich.
No. It's just with the rules of the game are set up differently. Okay. Just in the interest of time, trying to get through everything. Poor North Harwich had nothing in the 2011
Wow.
LCP. I mean, top of mind.
And now
what's-
it will be a hotbed.
I was gonna say, what's gonna hit
Discussion.
North Harwich top right now is potential, so two things, I guess, and these could maybe apply to, is, consideration of like traffic and potential high density, but it's,
Is Marceline in North Harwich?
No, this is,
Marceline, I would consider, well,
Harwich
where does Marceline, we're not calling it
No,
Marceline.
that's-
yes,
Yeah,
we're not,
What is that,
that's Harwich Center.
is that Harwich Center? Or is
be.
that Harwich Center / Pleasant Bay?
it could be
Pleasant Bay.
Pleasant Lake.
Pleasant Lake, yeah.
Yeah.
It could be
Pleasant Lake.
Pleasant Lake.
It's not, okay, that's not north.
Pleasant Lake Medical
No,
Center.
North
is right
Harwich
across.
is
46.
Pine Oaks Village.
And the odd
Right by
por-
the exit,
por-
east
east
of
of,
6.
Yeah.
So,
Marceline property it's part of the Six Ponds,
okay,
and that was actually a late addition.
so let's focus on poor North
Political.
Harwich that got
Yes.
nothing.
Now we know why. for
Yes,
some reason.
North Harwich, so the
Not on our
issues
watch.
there are, right, density in potential, I'm blanking on the group, the church group.
Pine Oaks.
Pine
Village.
Oaks, there we go, I was gonna call them Pilgrim Oaks, Pine Oaks.
Mid-Church Church.
Yes.
Mid-Cape Church.
Mid-Cape Church.
Yes,
homes.
Mid-Cape Church homes, Pine Oaks, possible Pine Oaks development, traffic at the four-way stop sign there, and then the developing issue with the old Eagle Pond nursing home.
Yeah.
And
I forgot where North Harwich was.
there. in, that's North Harwich. So what we're gonna say in North Harwich, it's like access and density, traffic and density are their issues.
Do we want to make any comments, like the commercial center that you've stated around East Harwich? Should there be commercial centers in each of the villages?
No,
There isn't a commercial center in
No.
North
Would be
Harwich.
zoning.
don't need them.
Isn't it there?
Just because historically there were 7 villages, we don't need to have 7 focal points. I don't think.
Okay.
And there isn't
Just
one.
bluntly
There
stating
isn't-
my
There
opinion.
isn't one in North Harwich. Any other North Harwich representing that we need to talk about there? I think those are the big ones. They just kind of want to be
I
left
think,
alone.
yeah.
Well, you know, I guess the transportation issue with Eagle Pond is having,
It's having its day in court, so to speak.
That's
Yeah, but
really
it's-
complicated. Yeah.
what the proposed use is going to have much less
Yes.
traffic impact than the old nursing home did.
You can have less.
That's the argument.
Yeah.
The argument is that the folks that are housed there are not
They're not gonna have
leaving.
any cars,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
so put
So
them
is there-
as far away from.
And it's for
Transportation
there
is
for a
possible.
period of time, supposedly. I mean,
So there is no transportation out there for them
Yeah, they just
that
have
I'm
to
aware
stay.
of, right?
Because there's no commercial
That's
center.
great location.
Because they're in a
Right.
economic situation where they're not
It's like a kind of
driving
like-
cars in
it's
and
a-
out. It's, it's a
And
shelter.
transportation will be provided, it's part of the
Yeah.
services that will be provided.
So they,
it's like a van, you know, like
Oh,
okay, you need to
so
go
it's
here.
not like they
That's
change,
good.
so, okay, so this is gonna be a bus route, there's not
But
gonna
when
be,
it was a nursing home, you had tons of staff coming every 8 hours. You had
I know, I'm not
Ambulances.
asking, I'm saying,
Yeah.
there's no way for these people to go anywhere though, unless somebody does something for,
yes.
Right.
But I think
it's
that's
not like
the-
the bus stop
It's
goes
the
up there.
program
No,
design.
because
so to
it's,
speak.
that's what the program is. It's a shelter. And it's meant to be
And
temporary, transitional.
But if,
And they will work with transportation to do some
Yeah.
shuttles and busing the kids to school
Yeah.
to pick up and drop off.
but the folks in North Harwich, that and also Pine Oaks, they feel a little stressed, you know.
Yeah.
Those are issues. All right, Harwich Center, near and dear to everyone's heart. No, I've read the plans too. I have no opinion about it, but I can imagine, you know.
I think the folks in North Harwich are sort of being goaded into it. It's
Sure.
about the color of their
Sure,
skin,
sure.
as opposed, and the folks in Dennis are looking at it because they would like it to be torn down so they could develop it for
Something else.
by the neighboring property owners.
Right.
Some of who would sit on the planning board.
In North Harwich, another thing that had come up about zoning is around the dump.
Yeah.
And the
Sorry.
dump, no, it's okay, I love it, it's great discussion, it's good. In North Harwich, the unique zoning of that industrial zoning, we've had a little discussion about that. Those properties are highly valued because that zoning is unique. Does anyone want, like the price of, in that industrial zoning is pretty high because you can do almost anything with it. Is there any discussion to say anything about that, increase that? I'm not sure that anyone really told us that in our data, but it's an interesting, economic thing.
Well-
Like, you can build a garage there, you know what I mean? You can do things, like, that's where they want to do the horseshoe crab stuff, and,
Yeah, that's what they are doing.
Yes,
horseshoe
yes,
crab
yes,
stuff.
yes.
But one of the interesting things is there's a part of the industrial area that has been developed for residential uses, and that was simply because there wasn't anybody who wanted the property for to build more
But now they do.
contractor days.
Yeah, but those go for a premium.
Queen
you
Anne's
know.
Court, you mean?
Huh?
Yeah.
The Queen Anne's Court
Yeah.
development?
There's some
Yeah.
houses
Yeah, I always
there.
wondered why those were there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Nobody could, I mean, they were, the reason the Queen Anne Court is there is because the property was so cheap,
Yeah.
and because there was no market for the industrial uses.
And I feel like it's switched, though. That
Yes.
Those properties are highly valued now because of
Yeah.
The,
Although our recent sale of the property that was going to be the pet cemetery.
Pet cemetery.
And now it's just a storage place for dirt and bark.
Okay.
It's not
And
like
the,
it really provides any employment.
Is West Reservoir in North Harwich or West Harwich?
which one?
West Reservoir with all the issues. I mean, that's kind of, to me, that's,
Feels like North Harwich.
I thought so. I don't know.
On the industrial land, I've argued for a while now that current commercial industrial, we don't need more commercial land. But industrial with the small businesses,
That's what I'm
We
saying,
do.
it has an economic.
I don't know if there's a good place to expand the district, but it's probably a question worth
Well,
asking.
you may want to consider altering the zoning designation on, especially the industrial areas in North Harwich, on Queen Anne to eliminate residential as a use. For industrial, there's still, half a dozen
Yeah,
lots
I could see that.
along there.
I
Yeah.
can see that.
Some of which are also, are still owned by the town.
All right, Harwich Center. I think it's something to like put on there, just as we talk about like options for local business, right? But a lot of people in our data said that like, we want to encourage economic innovation. There we go.
Here, I think what we can do, since 28, a lot of times I wonder if 28 through Harwich Port is just being used as a way to get to Chatham. And that's where a lot of the traffic is, because it's a highway. I don't see a lot of people stopping in Harwich Port. So I'm thinking, if Harwich Center needs
You
some
haven't
help
been
with.
there at night.
Yeah,
You haven't gone
Or
to
all
Harwich
summer
Port
long.
at night.
yeah, I'm not sure I buy that description.
You mean from there out?
But I'm thinking
If they are, it's
to try
because
to
they can't find any parking. There's any
have
more in
Harwich Center and
Chatham.
Harwich Port work in unison, if anything, to be a combined commercial, because there's no really a lot of restaurants or commercial ventures in the center that really thrive.
Well, you have
Up there.
well, it's different than it even was right here in Harwich Center. I mean, you have the seal, you have
Ruggies.
Ruggies was always the stewed tomato. That's always
Yeah.
been there.
yeah.
I mean, there's been some meaningful.
They've been
There
doing well.
has been, but I don't see them sustained, not.
So
is
we
one-
can talk
there-
about this.
Yeah.
Some Harwich Center, they had to fight tooth and nail to get a liquor license.
Well, there is
Yes.
one connection already, which is the cultural district.
Yes.
That's
There's
right.
The Harwich Center and the Harwich Port. From a
Okay.
land use standpoint, it would be really hard to connect them. Harwich Port is very far along towards being successful. Harwich Center has done well lately, but I think they're really going to have to proceed independently.
But there's
I don't think
also
there's
an
any
effort.
good way to-
Harwich Center doesn't sometimes wants to be left alone. I mean, right? The seal, we just even had the music in the bar there, and it was a big fight.
Okay.
But is there something to be said, now I'm just picturing in my
Yeah.
mind a triangle of sorts between the commercial development in Harwich Port, commercial development in Harwich Center, commercial development in East Harwich, that we're trying to, within the culture of the town, trying to build up the use, whether it's additional parking, encouraging another restaurant.
So
I just-
here's what
Restaurant
here,
starts.
so here's what it says about Harwich Center economic development, which is right on in 2011. Economic development should recognize two important characteristics: the historic character of the village, the cemetery is very old, the church is very old, and all that, and its proximity, revolutionary old, and its proximity to the rail trail, right? Enhance Harwich Center role as the historic and government center of the town, including small-scale business. That could probably just be cut and pasted.
Brian, I gave you an overly blunt response before this that we shouldn't have 7 village
Yeah.
centers.
I noted that.
I apologize for my
Put
style.
that down, no recordings there.
I apologize for my style. But what I have suggested, which it has been reflected in the latest draft, is that we've got 4 that we should focus on. Harwich Center, Harwich Port, East Harwich, and I added West Harwich, which we'll be getting to.
Yes.
But I think the strategies for each of those are very different. I don't think there's an
Well,
overarching.
not necessarily an overlap, I'm just thinking the vision of the community
Okay,
is.
so this is the thing, when you talk about the culture, that's why it's still 7 villages. I mean, the Cape and the 15 towns are still, we're still fighting that very provincial attitude. Harwich Center wants to be Harwich Center, doesn't necessarily want to play nice with Harwich Port and East Harwich, That's,
Well,
that isn't really correct, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is when you start to talk about the culture of the town,
Harwich Center.
it's
We're not
defined,
Harwich Port,
it's
we're
defined
Harwich
by
Center. Yes.
exactly that.
It's otherness.
The
Yes.
identifications that people have with their specific village,
Well,
so
they
that's
should-
an uphill fight, I
I don't know,
think.
should it stay that, should it be that way?
It shouldn't be that way.
Pushing up daisies.
Okay,
I think the history should be fully recognized of the
Yeah.
7
Yeah.
villages. I think
And I think
looking
it still has an
forward,
influence, is
there are
what I'm
different
saying.
strategies.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
thinking how we communicate the development of the commercial sides of these. Do they complement one another? I don't, maybe I'm thinking more of how you advertise
Ooh,
it.
we have to say in Harwich Center, you gotta put something about the Brooks Museum, because that's,
Yeah,
that's,
well, you're right.
that's,
There's a great deal of history there, then.
great deal of history, and there's like stuff on the table about the funding of
You
it.
know,
And the
the
recreation.
library at the other end.
Yeah,
the
library.
Recreation.
They
yeah.
are the bookends of. the-
Library, the park, Brooks Park, the schools.
in the late 1800s, Harwich Center was the banking center of Cape Cod.
I talked to Paul
This
Doan,
was
and
the
that was
bank.
the center. I mean, that
This was the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's-
Yep.
Yeah, and the
Um,
Brooks, the library was just a little room on the
But-
top of what was a
But
mercantile.
really,
I'm not
you
gonna
know,
lose track of my thought, I'll come back to it in a future meeting.
If you look at you know, the use, really is very little left in terms of
Space.
commercial development, you know. There is some spaces available that would be good for sort of higher density residential. I mean, you know, they're just doing it with the Royal over here, which would add support to the businesses that are there, and make it be a little bit more vibrant. On the other 8 months of the year.
All right.
You know.
Poor South Harwich, there's nothing in the 2011 about South Harwich or West Harwich, so at least we're being
There's a
thorough.
former florist there.
Yes,
Yes.
Right.
no, and
Yeah,
I know the
I'm
man
wondering
who
what's
has the
going on
post
there.
office.
The post office.
The South Harwich post office is very beloved.
It is.
South Harwich. They're moving historical house. I don't know, Barbara. That's a. You know. So there's the tension there. South Harwich. To your point, people drive through South Harwich. That's fairly true. Like you leave Sequatucket, and then you do roll to Chatham. But there are businesses along the way. There's a lot of history along the way.
A whole lot of history.
Very, very beloved Red River Beach. The
Yes,
major
yes.
beach of Harwich is there.
Right.
We should maybe put that in there. South Harwich is not just drive through the beach.
These sort of things can be mentioned in that community character
Right.
section. As far as bullets as to what's needed, I think there aren't a whole lot of bullets for South Harwich. But I think we should fully
Do
describe
you want
what
to say
they
something
are.
about the watershed? I mean, Red River, the flow out there.
Wellfield. We have Wellfield to deal with as well as the, well, I don't think that wasn't one of the estuaries that was impacted.
No. Well, it's impacted more out of Chatham.
Right, but it's not from us though.
And just minimally by areas in Harwich. Most of the flow out of South Harwich goes right out to the
Right,
south.
and now with the HCT
I was just
purchasing
gonna
all
say,
that
wait a
property,
minute,
I mean, that's gonna
Red River
be,
Valley,
right.
and they'll
Red
be
River Valley
moving
would be
their
huge.
headquarters there, so that,
That's gonna be huge as far as
yeah.
trails and everything else going through there.
But they've got some parking there,
Oh,
they've already
yeah.
got the infrastructure
They've got
of the
everything
house
ready.
that they're gonna retrofit to the office, so
That's worth mentioning.
it's,
Yes, yes,
soft on the
dynamic.
landscape.
Don't forget the South Harwich Meeting House, the history.
Right.
It's just
Oh, yeah.
expand because all of the points are I can see something as far as to Brian's point is, it's already established, Harwich Port has made itself a destination. So the idea was not to change each village character, but just expand the destination by just really letting those notable areas be used or marketed better to expand that area. So it's all about, you're gonna come visit Harwich. And then you'll see the different characteristics in each village, but you're gonna expand all of that, where people, as I said, A lot of people just drive through. From my experience in walking down, because I can walk to Harwich Port. I'd like to walk to East Harwich or bike there at least. I can't do that now.
We would love to have you.
But just bike there and visit and come back. Go home.
Mary, when you're going through that description, you might want to change the word expand, because you're going to get a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
But as you said, it's for
Enhance.
good discussion
Enhance.
as far as enhance.
All right.
I like that.
All right, West Harwich, the key.
Yeah, this needs some discussion.
West Harwich is underutilized. There are, the historical overlay district of the captain's houses, which is incredibly important, and the schoolhouse project is important. It's a good example of like the overlay of like, you can walk to Dennisport there. You still can't buy groceries there, which is kind of a shame, but there's a lot of density in Dennisport.
Oh,
You can go to the dollar store, you can go to,
unless you want
Wegmans.
natural food.
yes, oh yeah, but yes, you can go to Rory's, you can go to the dollar store, Job Lot, Walgreens. That is actually a walkable by toothpaste.
But no AAP.
No way, I miss AAP. Anyway, 40 years later.
The
The,
theater.
And there,
Junior theater.
and it's car parts. I've been watching for years. I think we've all been hoping another market would go in there, but they won't, because Stop and Shop is where it is and
Yeah.
Star Market's where it is. And then I was all excited when I saw some activity there, but it's an
Where?
auto.
Auto
Where-
parts
where
store
the
next to the
AMP
dollar
was?
store.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just gonna be an auto parts store.
between the Captain's Row, the Route 28 improvements, and the tie into Dennisport,
Yes,
there's definitely things that could be said here.
yes.
Yeah, and the theater is the anchor.
Theater,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think imperfectly, right, the
Oh,
vibe
oh,
is
it
still
should be.
strong on the schoolhouse, that,
Yeah.
that's some sort of repurposing.
It's an anchor that doesn't have anything to do with its neighbors.
What's that?
Well, what do you
The
mean?
junior theater?
Yeah. It's a nice thing, but it's just sort of by itself.
Oh, but I mean, in terms of beloved by the community.
Oh, I
Yeah.
agree, it's got community ties. I'm just not convinced it has West Harwich ties.
Historical ties, or?
It's been there for most, I think, of its 70 years.
Yeah, it's a wonderful
It's a
thing.
great example of
It-
like they use the Dennis public parking right on the
Yeah.
other side of
That's true.
Dominion
That's
Street.
Well, and the Chase, and we've overlooked the Chase Library because it's
Yes.
a private library that's open like 2 half-days a week.
They have good books.
Sorry, but it's true, yeah,
If you want a
Yeah.
hot book,
yeah.
it's underused.
And then there was
Says
the
for those
loss of
friendlies,
the
which is not
friendlies
worth
that used to be there, and then, it was pre-COVID, it was great
My
for the
wife
restaurant. but-
absolutely hates that it's a fishing.
I know, it's a title.
Oh, I do
Yeah.
too.
A bait shop.
Well, and I did not realize
We have
that
to honor all
the,
cultures.
the restaurant actually did resurrect itself, but over in Chatham.
Right.
But that's whoever owns that property, and I know it does seem a little bit large to be
All right.
needed for bait.
Pleasant Lake, and please, yes.
For the West Harwich,
Yes.
in some of the building
Yeah,
department,
of course.
we
There's a lot
field
going on there.
lots of questions relative to the zoning. And
Yes.
so I do think, revisiting the DCPC aspect of the historic preservation, because there are no guidelines that were ever adopted for the historic district. And so I do think there needs to be some workaround relative to that
Yeah.
area for the West Harwich
So
DCPC.
tell us, like,
The historic overlay.
like you can
Historic
buy the
overlay,
house and people
so-
are asking about like, what can I do with it?
So we get
Yeah.
questions a lot about what's allowed, what isn't allowed, and so there are heavy regulations in terms of business, and and for several of the buildings, they're now falling apart or dilapidated. They're not being reinvested, and part of it is it because of the restrictions and whether or not are we achieving the intention of the historic preservation or incentivizing developers to revitalize these buildings. And then also, if you're going to do new development within those areas, are we going to try to replicate like a historic village of some sort or have some design guidelines in place. And my understanding is that the Cape Cod Commission did do design guidelines, but they're not part of the zoning requirements. They're not part of any documents that I've come across. So it's
That we
something.
should mention all
Yeah,
of that.
that's
Yeah.
a real good point.
Should be
We're
clear
just-
what you can and cannot do there. Yes.
With that, Harwich has sort of design guidelines on sort of architecture and stuff. It's very hard in Massachusetts for those to actually have any teeth.
Mhm.
And the only way for them to have teeth is if the area incorporates itself as a historic district, which,
Isn't that what it did?
no.
It's a unique designation, right?
It's a historic overlay zoning district, but it's a historic district. Historic districts can literally tell you what type of shutter you're gonna put on
Yeah,
your
what
house,
color you
what type
paint
of
it.
color you're
Yeah.
gonna paint, what type of bush you're gonna put, you know.
Yeah.
What does the overlay accomplish?
The purpose, that's my question. The purpose was for historic district of critical planning concerns, so,
There was a very good groundswell of some action there, but it really hasn't, it needs more work. So it's something this LCP should identify as needing some focus.
I guess so. What I'm saying, so it's that area. So if I went and wanted to buy, we call it the Irish pub, but the Chase House,
Yeah.
like on the corner, which is for sale.
Yeah.
So headed east.
the Chase House isn't part of the district.
Oh, fascinating.
I thought it went up to the river.
It goes up to the river, and I thought the Chase,
No.
isn't that on the other side
Chase
of the
House
river?
is
That's
west
on-
of the river.
It's west of
Okay.
the river.
I'm
That's
sorry,
the
my
platinum
mistake.
right there.
Yeah, that
yes.
pub, the Irish
Yeah,
pub.
the Irish pub.
No, no, no,
Yeah.
not the
Not
Claddagh.
the Claddagh,
No,
on
not
the other
Claddagh.
side.
The Irish pub, yeah.
Right.
Irish
pub
pub
is for
It's
sale.
for sale. I'm
Right
just
on the river.
hypothetically, so we
Yeah.
could understand
Yeah.
kind of question. If I wanted to buy it and I want to make it, well, I want to make it a bar, or could I tear it down? Or what is the overlay district accomplish? Can I
You
not
can.
tear it down, but I can make it a bar? I'm just trying to
Well,
understand. I don't want to do anything with it, but to be clear.
Well, it's been a bar, so.
Yes,
Yeah.
so it could be a bar? Okay.
I wish I was better at this.
No, no.
I think there's
I'm
some.
not quoting you, I'm just trying
Yeah.
to understand.
No, no, I think they're, for pre-existing, yes, if it's there. I think there are limitations with restaurants. It's very strict.
Got it.
And so, but if you're going to do anything up to code, I do think it becomes very restrictive for someone to want to invest in that area if they have to meet certain criteria. And there are restrictions, but it's sort of why they restrict certain businesses, and it's to a point where what's the purpose of restricting the business
Yeah.
if it's not having any impact on
Yeah,
changing the building? Because I mean, you have
places.
you have Domino's and some
Yeah.
other
Yeah,
strip mall type
Yes.
development in that district,
Yeah.
and how does that?
yeah, but the,
But
you know, the
the-
Bishop's Terrace is falling
Yeah.
down.
But the
Yeah.
proposal that kicked it all was when they wanted to buy the old rectory of the Baptist church.
Yep, yep.
And they
that's-
wanted to tear it down and put in a dollar store.
Yes.
Right.
And that just. the
That got it
neighborhood
going.
went
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
insane,
yeah. Got it.
you know.
But,
So
so
those
are there
sorts of things.
restrictions?
Yes,
are
I'm
there
sorry, I'm not
restrictions-
articulating it really
Are
well.
there restrictions about appearance or
Yes.
like, okay, that's helpful
But there
me
aren't,
understand.
there aren't restrictions on the appearance. It just says, oh, you can't tear it down. And then,
Okay,
but there's no guidance of, all right, if I'm going to do improvements or
Yeah.
redevelop something,
yes.
what
can I-
can you do? And there's no guidance. So to
Got it.
David's point, this needs to be this needs more work.
we have to say that,
So
right,
we-
because it's,
Because you do want
Yeah.
to preserve, I mean, even from the old Irish pub,
yeah, but your point
Why-
particularly is like you want to preserve, but you also want it to like go on, it doesn't need to fall into the earth.
why,
You have to
why has
reinvest
the
in
Irish
it.
pub
Yes, yes.
remained dormant?
Oh, there were other issues there.
Yeah.
Go
Go back and look in the
We could read
archives,
that
yeah.
about that.
But no, since it's closed though, why is it
You
that nobody?
you can read, it has nothing to do with the building.
Yeah.
It has to
Okay.
do with the licensing.
Yeah.
It's public record. You can, if you Google it. outside of our planning issues, personal, people,
The guy-
people issues.
The guy that was taking it over just didn't have the money to do it, and it placed all the licenses at risk.
I'm just surprised that nobody's done anything with it. Yeah.
Pretty
There's
high
a lot
threshold
to
to
be
get
done.
a pretty high
Yeah.
threshold to get a liquor license.
Yeah.
You know.
So
Kinda like-
with one of the other properties, Bishop's Terrace,
Bishop's Terrace.
apparently that can't be taken down.
I
but
love that place.
How long is it going to be before it gets condemned?
I think it is
It
condemned.
already is.
So,
It's got
I mean,
those
you can't
X's
take it
on
down,
it.
but you're not. It's
Why
so,
can't you, oh.
It's just gonna
because of the
wait till it
overlay.
falls
Yeah,
into
it's just
the
so far
earth on
gone.
its own.
So this is Christine's
No, no,
point.
no, no, no.
Yeah.
It can be
God, we
fixed.
do more work here. Okay.
one more question about.
And then plus.
Do you know the status of the highway project? Is that still going on? Not sure.
For which project?
For West Harwich, the Route 28 project.
I thought they had to put the sewer line in first.
I
that
think
what it
that's
was?
still going, but I'm not sure.
I
Let me
think it
double
is,
check
because
on
they
that.
just,
Yeah,
they,
it
I
is.
think they just let something go in the last month or so, 6 weeks, Ed. It's about putting in the sewer line, because sewer line has to go in prior to them repaving 28.
Well, it's sort of gonna go all at the same time.
Yeah.
And
But there was some.
part of the benefit, and the sewer line is actually coming out cheaper than they ever imagined it was going to. That and the water, they're gonna also replace the water line. But the deal is, you do it in conjunction with the project. Caltrans pays for tearing it up, and then you just have to do the trenches.
But at one point, there was a real difference of opinion about design. The state wanted complete streets, which means bike path and wider road,
Yeah.
and Duncan Berry wanted a much more, landscaped focused area. And other than the news headlines at the time, I didn't know if anything had
I don't know
happened.
where that happened. where
So
that
you,
fell
so
out.
we don't know
I
where
think it was
that's
a
going.
mix, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know what they ended
Like
up.
one side was gonna have,
I don't know.
but, or,
I never saw a follow-up, so.
You know, if you look at the old pictures of that stretch, it had, the majestic old elm trees. and all.
Yeah.
right.
That's
So
hard to get
Harwich
that
Port.
through DOT these days.
Yeah, well, it's hard to plant elm trees.
Well, there are other trees that are.
Yeah.
There, I mean, there's also part of there, the Hang River watershed and all that, but, we're addressing that in other parts. This is like community design stuff. All right,
I can follow up on that.
Pleasant Lake.
Pleasant Lake, which I think we should say, parcel line. I'm not sure if I'm accurately putting that in Pleasant Lake, but it's, North Harwich and Pleasant Lake.
So it's interesting in
It's
Pleasant
right up
Lake.
above
I'm gonna find
Topolowski's old office.
Yes, it's right there, that corner.
That's
yeah.
not North Harwich.
That's Pleasant Lake, you would say?
I think
Up
it may still
124
be
it is.
within the bounds of Harwich Center before you go over the highway, but it's definitely not North Harwich.
Right.
There's
Okay.
the whole section on transportation.
I think so. I think possibly.
I'm gonna
Is that irrelevant now?
Well, I mean, that's the whole process, the project that,
28's not public.
that Link Cooper put together to rebuild
Yeah. 124.
124 that,
That's dead.
And-
Totally dead.
and got commitments of the state to pay for 90% of it, only to have the neighborhood kill it.
Right.
So,
That's okay.
Change in character.
Yeah.
They went through the same thing in Brewster.
yeah. Well, the interesting thing, if you go into Brewster on 24, the road is the same, but they cleared a rough shoulder on either side of 24 along there.
Yeah, but
Which-
124, but Brewster 124 doesn't have the houses as close to the road as Harwich
Yeah,
does. There's a huge difference with that.
But, they say, Brewster is still this, little country road. Well, it's not. I mean, it's got 10, 12-foot dirt shoulders on both sides.
People
For
spend
applicable to all villages, do we need to get into this applicable to all villages? Are we doing enough of that other places, zoning, land use? I know that actually
I think we
seems-
need to be specific for what we're talking about, not,
I think this maybe muddies the waters
Yeah.
since we've
Yes.
gotten so specific
I
in other
agree.
areas that like I would tend to,
that'd be my,
eliminate that whole section. Like, nothing is applicable to all villages.
Okay, here we go.
No.
Okay. We have some contentment about the village strategies.
Yeah.
Alright, we have 30 minutes left. We have economy, natural resources. I never got to the updated culture, but someday I will. So we have two, we will. Bernadette and I are good for it.
I keep waiting for you, I'm
I
sorry.
know, it's
Maybe
all
I
right,
should
will. I
try
actually
to poke
probably
you.
actually maybe have some time this weekend to do it. So economy and natural resources, let's bang out that. We should be able to do that. We got through actually the toughest stuff right now.
Mm.
Economy. Down. Harwich economy. I was just as we're always talking about this in real time, I was impressed that the library has shut down on Monday because they can't hire enough people to keep it open.
It's a safety issue.
Oh, no, I'm
As
not
well, yeah.
criticizing.
No,
I
that's not-
understand. It's just
So,
not enough
yeah.
librarians to keep the show going.
Yeah, there's a couple positions they're waiting to fill, but we're running into some issues that we
Right.
have to work out. There are still staff in the building on Monday. And
Yes.
so what's happening too is that they're being able to do a lot of the tasks they weren't getting to on the other days when they have to
Yeah.
be there for the patrons. But yeah, it's temporary. It's very much being emphasized as
No, I'm not
temporary.
criticizing. It was
No,
just,
no, I understand. We had to do it
enough,
once before
Enough
and-
humans to work, is related to economy,
Yeah.
I think it's only gonna get worse.
Yeah, there's some issues with working out
Yeah.
the positions and hiring too, but, so it should get better soon.
Yeah, just as economy,
Yeah,
Oops.
Is that a statement about the dwindling percentage of full-time residents too?
Yep.
no,
Part of the trend that's gonna continue.
there's more going on behind the scenes with that one,
that's all good.
yeah.
All right, so if we
Well,
go,
the point that, where I think with Ryan is the fact that this is gonna start happening everywhere. I mean, as far
It
as,
already has been.
it has been, but it's only gonna get
This
worse.
closing is not completely
I'm not-
related
No,
to,
That's fine, I'm saying, but other places are. I mean, a lot of the shops, I mean, we got 55%,
Yeah.
probably more, coming over the bridge every day. At some point, they're gonna stop doing that.
yeah,
I mean,
I'm not disputing that issue.
everybody's looking for help wanted, not only just summer, but other times. I mean, it's gonna get
here
worse.
gets the industrial thing, we got that in there. So if we look at draft policies, protect and build upon the town and region's natural resource assets, yeah. Use resources and infrastructures efficiently to support local businesses and residents, sure. Encourage businesses and industries that provide living wage to a diverse workforce. Provide support for local businesses that serve local needs, including tradespeople to support construction. Review the availability of existing industrially zoned land for remaining development potential to support local tradespeople. So I'm glad we did talk about that, so that was
Yep.
getting in there somewhere. Build upon Harwich's cultural strengths to support economic growth and provide adequate infrastructure, including seasonal transportation infrastructure to support cultural activities. Because we had talked a little bit about that in the report.
Seasonal transportation infrastructure.
It's like a trolley.
That's right.
Yeah, shuttles to help.
From the high school to the
ameliorate
beaches.
the,
It's a trolley,
Right, there you go.
it's trolley to Harwich Port at night.
Economy.
Yeah.
What do we used to call it, the drunk bus, yeah, anyway. I'm joking,
It's the fun bus.
Yeah, the fun bus, yeah.
Find locations to establish blue bus network, blue bike network, I mean.
At some point, should we call out some of these things that we heard at these workshops to say, continue to investigate
Right,
the opportunity to utilize this? We shouldn't shut. I think we should mention some of them at some point.
yeah, we got the health stuff in here, anything else we're missing about the economy? I forget, again, we're gonna have to look at this, the whole thing again,
Right.
Yeah.
when we see it in, because I don't know if we're under mentioning the schools here, because, I mean, we've seen other stuff about schools, but I have to see it in all the settings, we may have that, because we know the school, you know, in doing some reading about this, like in towns, in vibrant towns, right, like, your school system, and I guess evidently really in elementary school as well, is like this important cultural anchor in a community in terms of the health of a community and stuff like that.
It's a big
So-
issue in Chatham, right?
Yes.
With creating the Monomoy
Yes,
district.
yes, you know, so this of like, it's not just, oh, isn't that cute? It's reflective of, you know, a lot. So that would be my one question of if we're under mentioning the schools here, but it may be somewhere else, so. Other thoughts about the economy?
I think we've already got it into the village strategies, but there has to be an economic dimension that we're seeing here in these bullets that get pulled into the design.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing that would be interesting to say is, yes, I wonder if, again, we may have mentioned it somewhere else, but also here, you know, the idea of being able to work remotely has increased the chance for folks to live on the Cape. And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
You know, it potentially brings more
More year-round.
diversity, economic diversity, maybe a little less reliability on just a tourist economy.
Right.
You know?
When you're here year-round, you have to eat in restaurants and you have to shop. Actually, that's not a bad thing to encourage.
Correct, correct, in terms of economic vibrancy, right?
Especially if they have
And
kids.
also equity.
Right,
Yes.
yeah, that would be where we'd bring some kids back into it more.
Yep, so that could be, you know, potentially be put in the economy section, right? If you have people that are able to like work in Boston, work in Manhattan, you know, and live here, or wherever. Banging our drum on affordable and attainable housing. Okay.
Yep.
We're good with the economy?
I think so.
At this point.
All right.
Yeah.
It's a political question.
I know.
Very, very
No, big
open.
debate tomorrow night. All right, let's go to natural resources then.
Design.
Resources. All right. I think at one point the feedback was about our ponds, right? From Margot and stuff.
Right, we don't have draft policies here. Oh, I guess.
Oh,
we do.
lakes and ponds, we got a whole
You're
section on
you're
lakes
right,
and
you're right.
ponds.
Yep, yep.
Nice.
There's
Okay.
several, right. This is where there's multiple goals and policies.
I'd love to see the open space plan before
Yeah.
doing too much on this.
This is
Really needs to
fairly
be
rich
totally
by
integrated.
comparison to the other sections.
Oh, and this is gonna be somewhat repeating of the open space plan, right?
Yeah, I would think there'd be some overlap, wouldn't it?
Yes.
This is an expertise for Christine, and I wonder if it's provocative that we should include this. Was lucky enough to spend the last week of September or last week of August on the Vineyard, and they report on the front of the paper about how much money from the local real estate transactions over a certain amount has gone to the land bank. We talked about that. You mentioned it a little bit to us. Is that some, you know, and you know all those related strategies. Should we be putting, I mean, knowing what we know, should we be recommending? People always say no, we say no.
To recommend what?
You know, so we talk about open space goals, so it says, you know, we're trying to conserve, preserve, or enhance Harwich's open space network. So you could also put, say, you know, recommend, you know, real estate, whatever that particular maneuver is, where, you know, a certain real estate transaction over like $1 million, you know, $1.5 million or so, whatever you said the threshold is, a percentage of it goes into the town to buy land. Right, and you mentioned in this process some of those things that have been
Yes.
used on a place like the Vineyard. You're very familiar with those tools. Should we recommend some of these?
For transfer fee tax for conservation?
Yeah. If we're saying buy more land, maybe we should give them more money.
Yeah.
Or at least say we should give them more
Well,
money.
there are opportunities. It hasn't really been discussed and I didn't see it mentioned in the survey. So, you know, as a tool, it could be as an option. But I do think it should be also mentioned hand in hand with the housing bank transfer fee that they're looking to do, just
Sure.
so that we're identifying some of the competing
Sure,
uses for
sure.
pots of money for land conservation. The other issue,
I don't think it was mentioned in the survey because it hasn't been a topic of
Well-
discussion. But well, I mean, it was
And
the realtors.
And historically, as a source of funds for that, we've had the land bank CPC
Okay.
funding.
So I
which,
guess
because we had the land bank first on
Yeah.
Cape Cod, when we adopted the CPC, there was a commitment made that we wouldn't encroach on a portion going to the land bank,
got it.
which was more than the CPC Act required us to do. But now that's, the timing of that has, I think it ends next year. The CPC committee could direct more of that money to historic, recreation and housing that is currently, and reduce the amount going into open space.
I guess zooming up a little bit is, you know, putting, just as an educational to the community, proposing, you know, you don't have to say adopt, but consider, and then putting what some of those tools are, which some of those tools that have been less popular maybe here, and have been well utilized on, you know, Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
But, you know, in East Harwich, you know, the whole issue of if we increase development in the core and put more growth there, then we've got to subtract it from
yeah,
another area.
yeah.
Another way to do that, though, would be to, if you could develop a funding source to buy open space, is there's lots of the area, especially up towards Hawks Nest Pond, that's still undeveloped. If you had a funding source, you could buy that and strip the development rights off of it and move it into the village center.
Well, that's kind of what I'm
Yeah.
saying,
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
think that vibes with what people are saying, but
Yeah.
not everyone is as well educated about how to do that. So, you know, like how do you? They're like, I don't want to see the trees cut. Like
Yeah.
they kind of, on a moral issue, know that is like wrong and not good for us, and yet how do you do that? So that's Christine's.
yeah, so
What those tools
no,
are.
I think some of the
Yeah.
creating a toolbox
Yeah,
for
just
some
say
options.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
We're not legislating
No,
by
I like-
anything. but
I like your
you know,
terminology, create a toolbox.
Yeah, suggest what those are. So that someone isn't just have to be historical, oh my god, the trees, but like, hey, you know, which I understand. Like,
I
there,
guess
you know.
we should always say that we're learning from other communities around
Yeah.
the country,
Yeah.
expanding the toolbox. At one point, there was conversation about learning what they were doing in, whether it's Tahoe or
Vale.
Yeah.
Vail. But I,
You know, the land stuff is like, I mean, the stratification of economic resources and the pressure for second homes. I mean, like, you know, people jokingly say, what are they, the Harwich tuck at a river, but like, you know, this is all, it's all the same. They were maybe ahead of us, but we're coming along.
But I think it's also important for the short-term rental tax to maybe, whatever earmarks we can try and
Yes.
put aside for
Yes.
both housing, wastewater,
Yes.
and
Exactly.
for
Open space.
conservation.
Yes, yes. I mean, and I think that, you know, of course, there's people that will be against that, but like, it's at least suggesting it as a tool in the toolbox is consistent with what we've heard.
And it's consistent with what you need to protect the culture,
Right,
which is why people buy.
right, and making the community work for the community.
But you know, this whole thing with short-term rental tax, one of the things, I mean, it's supposed to go for this, and this, but we have absolutely no control, governance, anything over short-term rentals in this town.
Yep.
I mean, you know, I know Brewster's getting somebody, Chatham's supposedly getting somebody, but, you know, that's
Like an
that's
officer?
impacting. Yes, that's impacting our culture big time, and we could be getting more money from it.
Well, that's,
It was actually mentioned about rental community as far as in the economy section, that that's really the direction of where the economy is going, where that's where the money is. So maybe putting something in there that can actually add some type of regulatory, maybe that would be a good place. We recognize that that's just the natural way it's going. And there's statistics behind it, as far as that section actually said. There's statistics behind it say that that's where the money is. And so if that's the way it's going, let's go ahead and impose or suggest or recommend some type of oversight to
Right.
this, so we can have better content, and put that in the economy section. So that might be something.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think having the rental revenues, since they've now tracked it at the state level, is good to highlight as well. Just in terms of how well the town is actually doing, because a lot of that goes to the general fund, and so it might
Some
be
that
time.
goes for
Makes us
water,
hate everybody
wastewater.
less.
What's that?
It makes us hate everyone less. I'm joking.
Well, it's a
Or they call
reality, but it's something that's
Yes.
fueling our
Yes.
tax base. So
Yeah, that's great.
it is, we're benefiting from
Right.
it.
That's
So
So
we need to recognize that.
Catch-22 though, so we have less people living here because of it though.
Right.
right.
And that's
I mean, they're
true.
coming across the
not-
bridge and they're buying the houses,
No,
and
They're
people-
gonna do that anyway, though.
Yeah.
But we recognize, and we can then have controls over that.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying, so it's going that way, maybe some people see it as beneficial, but if you're the one trying to find a rental house year-round or to buy a house year-round, it's not
It's
beneficial.
always changing.
That's a good point, though.
No,
It's the
there
short-term
is a
versus
catch.
long-term. Yeah.
Barbara, I'm not debating,
No, I know.
I'm not saying that either. There are pros and cons to all of it.
Right, if this is how we're going, then we might as well make the most of it and get what we can out of it. However,
Gotta be careful of unintended consequences.
Yeah.
right,
One of the, the issues with rental housing, whether it's short-term or long-term, is that this town has resisted doing any form of registration program, which in my mind, it's hard to actually do any regulation to control it if you don't have a sense of
Right.
how much it's there. And it's been fascinating that the department that's objected to it the most has been the health department, the registration
Really?
program, because they claim they don't have the staff. Well,
staff, yeah.
You
But
can
you
establish a rental registration program with a
And it'll pay for somebody's
$250
salary.
Exactly.
fee, and you've got money to hire more
That's where you
staff
hire
than
your
know what
staff
to do,
from, the
you know.
fees.
Is
Right.
that opposition recent or several years ago?
Well,
Under
first
the
time I
previous
took-
health director or the current is what I'm asking?
Well, the first time I brought it up was under Paula.
That's what I'm saying.
and
Is that
then-
still the feeling post-Paula?
Yeah, and then the next time I brought it up, it was Megan.
Maybe consider,
there's been
just
Katie
put it as a
So that's-
tool, consider
that's
Too.
for a
But,
formal registry,
and,
yeah.
And then, you get a sense of how much there are, and you do things like, the interesting, the community that did it is Palm Springs. They got a sense of, they required everybody to register, and they did. And they divided the town up into, I think, 14 neighborhoods. They set a maximum number of permits in it. And one of the deals was, if you had a permit, you could continue, but the permit didn't go with the land. So all of a sudden, a lot of people who bought houses based on this belief that it had a certain value with the rental income, all of a sudden, in selling it, that couldn't be taken in as a factor because they wouldn't get a permit. So they were,
Devalued the
they bought
property.
a house, and they carried $1.2 million mortgage on it, and all of a sudden, all they could sell it for is $900,000. It's actually made housing more affordable.
Devalued.
It's not a bad
Yeah.
thing.
All right, unless you carry the mortgage, but no. So we finished natural resources, understanding that it's gonna have to dovetail into open space and recreation. So,
But just to comment though, the
Please.
tone of these things are very good.
yeah,
But
we're good there.
they're more specific than the other
Yep,
Yeah.
categories have,
Yep.
which I think we need to tighten up to be
agreed.
similar to
So
this.
the huge ask to Sharon is we need to read this all in one document.
Yeah.
We have the October date of the housing production plan meeting. Our next meeting for this shindig is October 1st, so it's it's actually 3 weeks because we met a week short because of Memorial of Labor Day, so it's Tuesday, October 1st. Question for you, Christine, because and then, sometime, probably November or December, we're gonna have a meeting with the planning board and the selectmen. Do we take, and then, open space and recreation is gonna get integrated in, do we take this whole show, we must have a feedback session before town meeting? On the whole shebang. Maybe we don't, I don't know.
I think having certain input, but I
Okay.
think when you're at a final draft stage,
Okay.
that's, going back for more feedback, you're just prolonging
Okay.
some of the writing and the rewriting.
Okay.
And I don't know in terms of our contract if we have that
So
ability
I'm
to
good
do
with,
that,
maybe we
so.
don't have to, I mean, if we go to, and we can actually can continue to have our public meetings, so maybe we could solicit some feedback in a current, all right.
So,
I do think the community outreach is very important because we do want this to be supported when we come to
Yeah.
town meeting.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not saying not to, we
Yeah,
do need
yeah.
to do public
Yeah.
outreach.
Yeah,
But we don't have a
But I
public
think we have to
forum
couch it in
planned?
a way that we're presenting, these are the findings of the LCP in our last 2 years of the planning process.
Yes.
And
Just to give them a heads up, education, so that they don't have to read it the night before
Town-
town meeting.
But
so just one question, the housing production plan, is that going to become the de facto housing section?
I believe so.
Okay,
And I think that goes with the open
We've
space.
already
and
been
rec-
given a housing draft from Sharon,
yeah.
which is much smaller than the
which
housing
is basically
production.
kind of like, I understood it as the executive summary
Correct,
of the
yeah.
housing production plan.
See,
Not
I
the
think,
whole thing, yeah.
I think, well, the housing production plan will be referenced. I think the chapter on housing is actually very important for us.
Right,
Because I've argued that Karen's plan, while wonderful, is going to be way too much to absorb.
Right.
And we've really
Oh,
got
yeah.
to pick out
Right.
the important stuff.
right.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I think, yeah.
Summary. And I think the open space and recreation plan will be similar to that. You know, we'll do the executive summary, but also pick out some of the key priorities for the goals and strategies of
It's
the plan.
open space and recreation element of the comprehensive.
Yes, and so for the open space and the HPP, those both need to be submitted to the state by the end of the year for their
Okay,
approval.
we're coming in hot.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we are, so timelines, we do need to keep
Okay.
Both of those only need to be approved by,
the planning board and select board, yes. For the HPP, the open space, I think we can the select board, the planning board, conservation can write letters of endorsement, and then they submit it to DCR.
Okay, so that's really your focus. Yeah.
Yes.
As the professional staff, yeah, coming up. Yeah.
Right.
Right, sorry, I don't mean to stress you out.
No,
but
no, no,
I'm
no,
feeling it, I'm feeling what you're laying
No,
down.
I think for the LCP though, I do think getting this into a one document is
Yeah.
really important, and
Yeah.
we need to move, that should be a key priority right now.
With an executive summary that
Yeah.
can be shared and digested.
What's a cohesive statement?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that maybe the spirit of this, as the ink is drying on the draft, and I know we don't want to do revision after revision, but maybe there's a spirit of, there's a continuity going forward. This isn't just sitting on a shelf, and maybe this comes back to governance and steering, but it seems to me that evolving all these plans means those who are interested that might react to whether this bullet point should be
Yeah,
above
yeah.
or below.
Well, that's kind of why
can
we're taking it
participate.
to the people now,
Right.
like, go out to the community.
Right, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
if for, going forward, after we deliver this and they vote on it, I would think there might be continued room for town participation to ensure that it,
We hope.
Oh,
it's
for
needs.
implementation, absolutely.
Yeah.
so that's just a way for them to.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
This goes to town meeting in May.
yeah.
So backing up, when does it have to be absolute finalized before that, as far as if we're gonna, get with other groups and just kind of give them a heads up, as Mary said, when does that have to happen?
The intent was to have that start coming this fall, so,
Okay, so who are we going to?
the town boards. So
Oh,
like the planning board, the
Okay,
library, the health.
Okay, that's a itty bitty little section of people that are gonna go to town meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
so
So for
but
public meeting.
you start to touch these people more. That's why I'm saying, I'm joking about talking about, I mean, it is a small town, like, talking about it, you're going to your conservation, David's doing his part, I am actually doing the social media part of it, like, I will, like, talking about the HPP, and hey, this session here, that's like a piece of it, so I mean, I think, to reiterate
Okay.
what Christina's saying is we're doing it.
Okay.
And the goal, we're doing it now, and the goal is because she has to have the housing production and open space done by January 1st. I mean, that's gotta go in, and then the rest of it. So like the rest we're talking about now with our committees, who you're going out, who you're interfacing with, and reiterating that the focus is kind of on those last bullet points. Of like, what are the action
Right.
steps? And then I would imagine May, right? I mean, this
March.
probably like March 1st, right? Something like that.
It should, I think we need to have a draft. I think the intent was to have it by the new year.
Sure.
By the end of the year,
Sure.
to have at least a good draft, and then
Yeah.
you can take that as a final round to maybe have just a public presentation
Sure,
on it.
sure,
So,
Sure, ask
yeah.
your questions in February, say, and then we're gonna vote on this
Yeah.
in May, and, right, because it should be a done deal in May. There's no discussion.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right,
There's no,
right.
like.
But there will be a town meeting, so
Yeah.
we gotta, I think we gotta anticipate how to steer it. Yeah, of course there will be.
I don't know, for those who have been present when the last ones, is it just kind of like one of the first night check at a check things? Is it really controversial?
You just never know.
Yeah.
It could be, most people don't even know what it is and be like, yep,
Did
fine.
Brewster's
But
not
you
be
can often
Brewster's?
have one gadfly who will get up and, it'll take an hour's
about
debate and
pesticides.
discussion. That's the beauty of
Yeah.
town meeting.
Just to note, our bylaws require that articles be presented by the second Friday or in February.
Yeah, so January 1st is, okay, so
And
January
final
1st is
form.
January 1st is our,
Yeah.
love
In
it.
final form.
Yeah, well,
The current select board has found us a squirrely enough attorney to
Well, we will
interpret
try
a
to-
lot of.
we will try to get to the spirit of the.
Elbow room
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
that, which I disagree with, but,
Okay.
it should
But I
be-
think that should be our target date then.
to be able to
Or at least for
deliver it.
me, I feel comfortable, let's get it.
Yeah,
before
yeah,
now,
yeah, yeah, so we have the thing done by second.
Okay.
5 o'clock, close the business.
Great.
The second Friday.
We can do that. We're in good enough shape to do that. We're trying. All right.
And this whole issue
No stress.
of governance that Patrick brought up, I think, there could be a second section that, and I don't know how binding it would be, but to talk about, to keep this a living document, that there be a yearly hearing and report on implementation.
We heard it from a lot of
We heard
people, not
from-
just Patrick.
Yeah.
And where's Patrick's document? Did that?
It was just
It's a
sent
It
out,
separate
wasn't a
email.
document, it was just an email.
An email that was shared with
just
us.
It's an
came through to
email.
us.
I can
Just
go
an
back and
email.
see it. But I do think we want to say something about governance. And I volunteered to start working on it.
Thank you.
Well,
That and the priests.
Can that be on our next agenda?
Sure.
Nearer to God than I.
Yes.
do you think appropriate to speak to different folks, almost in interview mode, in advance of crafting something? Like, should we be talking to members of the select board? Should we be pulling
Select
Jeff
board
into
won't
it
talk
as
to
our
you.
conduit?
That's it.
Well,
That's
Jeff's
a
our
lo-
conduit.
I've always been of the mind that you do a draft of something
Yeah.
and then take it around. Maybe
Right.
get input.
And I got,
Then ask them, how would you do this? And you
Or
get-
what do you think?
Yeah.
Right.
yeah.
Works
and
or
when you
doesn't?
talk about governance, are you talking about as it relates to the LCP, our plan,
Yeah.
as opposed to the problems of communication with the public that we have at town hall and the select board criticizing all the committees? You're not getting into that sort of thing with
No,
governance.
this is governance of the LCP.
My
Of
misunderstanding.
our goals.
Okay, I
That's-
misunderstood.
Our action
that's
items.
less politically charged.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
In California, the planning board, in our case, it's my town planning
So
and
you're,
zoning commission.
we'll still get together?
had
Your
to
comments are
Yeah, I'll
still?
talk to you in a minute.
Work to, I forget what the title of it was, the state agency on the hearing we had, reviewing the annual review of the local general plan.
Yeah, okay.
And it had to do that every year for 10 years. So we adopted a new one.
Okay,
We're right on time.
that
Final
might be something to consider.
in the governance section. We'll put governance on the next section, on the next agenda, and we will have hopefully a full draft. Next meeting we talked about is in 3 weeks, October 1st. Note all the November date because of the national election. It's gonna be Monday, November 4th, the night behind the night before the big house, big meeting, the big election. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Someone?
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? No one? All in favor?
Aye.
Lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Christine, for everything.
Yep,
So
thank
grateful
you.
for you.
Oh, I haven't done anything, really, don't thank me.
You're here.
We're so grateful for you. Doing this.
And Ed, I did mean to,
Oh, maybe.
on
I
the
might crash
wastewater,
into
I'm sorry, I think I got
I'll send you a note, David.
I'm getting out.